It's a pleasure to be here and to launch a wonderful project that's been nearly a decade in the making, and which we hope, given the theme of the symposium, will provide a way to continue and enrich many of the energetic conversations we've been having today, yesterday, and of course tomorrow. And this project is largely the vision of my friend and intellectual collaborator and accomplice, Barbara Williams Ellertson, who's sitting here next to me, who founded the project in 2014 and proposed a collaboration with the Schoenberg Institute for Manuscript Studies nearly 5 years ago. The project, as you've already heard a little bit, is BASIRA, Books as Symbols in Renaissance Art, a comprehensive open access online resource for representations of books and other textual documents in the figurative arts between approximately 1300 and 1600 CE, give or take 150 years on either side of Gutenberg, basically. Although, as we'll explain, this date range and geographical concentration we plan to expand it over time. As we've already seen today, and as we'll see tomorrow, the depiction of books and other written documents in the visual arts presents an extraordinarily rich source for study. BASIRA aims to build a central resource for querying this often intractable corpus of images, and we've seen already several speakers mention the difficulty in finding depictions of books when they're not properly cataloged as such. So this afternoon, we're thrilled to publicly launch the BASIRA search interface through a live demo via the URL, which you see on this slide, which is now officially live and open to browsing. But prior to this, we want to explain some of the background to the project and share some of our most exciting findings. And with this, I'll turn things over to Barbara.
Thank you, Nick. So I would like to take a few minutes this afternoon to walk you quickly through the origin story of the BASIRA project, just really in a way to appreciate the significance of today. This brief account does not do justice to the many acts of generosity extended to us, especially in the early days when a few independent scholars had an idea but zero institutional support and set out to build a database. I'd been designing and producing books for decades when I was sent to Florence by a client on a press check. On that trip, for the first time, I encountered extensive collections of medieval and Renaissance art in person. In museums and churches, so many saints, angels, and leaders were portrayed with books that I began to wonder about the symbolic role of artists' use of the book and how that might have changed across time. Then on my first visit to Venice, the Lion of St. Mark, gazing down at me from behind his fully opened book, set me on the path that has led to today's launch of the BASIRA database. Why was this creature holding a book? Had it always been portrayed in this fashion? And how long did this particular visual trope last? While I was certain that scholars would have researched the symbol of the book in the visual arts, my initial research found primarily discussions about the Annunciation scenes and the virtually universal presence of a book in such scenes. At the time, however, in the mid-aughts, there seemed to be a lacuna in the juncture of book history and art history. By 2014, art historian Janet Size and educator Tina Bessius were working with me, and we began to investigate ways to explore that lacuna. To facilitate longitudinal studies, we resolved to collect and tag images, which at the time was only for our own research. And I'd like to pause here to say that it was at this juncture that we devised the acronym BASIRA, specifically for this project, but I have recently been reliably informed that the Arabic translation of BASIRA is, and I would like to quote, seeing with heart, mind, insight, and foresight. So I think that's appropriate. Since Janet had used FileMaker Pro in her previous work, our initial database was set up in that format. And this image shows you our efforts, which was quite a struggle initially, to associate multiple book records with one artwork record. Our initial 300 entries gave us enough information to compile a preliminary report, which became our first public presentation at the National Coalition of Independent Scholars meeting in 2015 in New Haven. By the fall of 2018, the scope of BASIRA was broadening beyond the early modern era, and it was becoming clear that interest in the project was much wider than a few individuals could manage long-term. So I had actually, almost by accident, registered for the 2018 Schoenberg Symposium, which was dedicated to manuscript illumination and its intersection with other media. And this symposium introduced me to SIMS, which seemed to be an ideal home for the BASIRA project. After an initial brainstorming meeting the following May of 2019, we agreed to collaborate on a redevelopment schema for the database, and thus began my extraordinary intellectual partnership with Nicholas Herman. Doug Emery and the Cultural Heritage Computing team at Penn Libraries strongly advocated for contracting with an expert software developer to rebuild the database in an open access platform, one that would be compatible with other digital humanities projects at Penn. You don't want to know what I thought at the time. This path was greatly facilitated by the obtention of a digital humanities grant from the Samuel H. Kress Foundation in late 2019, as well as student support from the Price Lab for Digital Humanities. Over months of Zoom meetings during the pandemic, we drafted a request for proposals in the summer of 2020, evaluated responses that fall, and signed an agreement with Performance Software in the winter of 2021. By the following spring, Jamie Folsom and Derek Ledbetter at Performant had devised a data model that became the foundation of the new content management system. But then came the work of migrating hundreds of legacy records to the new platform. Since the reworked schema roughly doubled the number of fields for each record, the BASIRA team spent hundreds of hours filling in the new information and greatly enriching these records. Then, while the content management system was completed in the summer of 2022, development work for the web browser interface, which is what we are really launching today, that was delayed until this past spring of 2023. Our goal has always been to make the BASIRA interface widely and freely available. Many collegial scholars, advisors, funders, and no small amount of intensive work has brought us to this launch, when we can finally open the interface for your explorations and, we hope, contributions.
Before we take a look at BASIRA, a few words about the scholarly state of the question. Oops. Sorry, that shouldn't be there.
That's the wrong version.
Just a minute. No, not a problem. I'll just skip that slide. I'll just skip that slide for now. But what that slide shows are some of the more general interest publications on images of reading, images of books, and there are several of them that exist, as well as more scholarly interventions, such as James Watts's Iconic Books Project and Lucy Freeman Sandler's recent penned and painted book from earlier this year. And these have considered the image of the book in various configurations. But despite the pervasiveness of representations of books in pre-modern visual culture, no resource has been developed to date that aggregates such images. So several general publications do exist, but these are essentially non-systematic and anecdotal and directed more at general audiences than towards specialists. And we've listed more specific scholarly studies, and there are, of course, numerous articles that deal with certain aspects of the depiction of books in certain contexts. We've listed these on a project bibliography online on our website. But these studies often rely on a single scholar's sporadic discoveries of interesting book depictions. So during the course of our work on this project, we found that numerous scholars have built their own informal stashes of images, but these are by their very nature incomplete and dependent on the happenstance encounters of a single scholar, and of course not freely browsable by the public. So despite the potential pertinence of such a resource to researchers specializing in histories of the book, histories of literacy, gender, art, material culture, music, private life, and religion, a comprehensive database of this type had been lacking until now. Up to now, in order to locate a historical image of a specific personage interacting with a book, or a rendition of a particular binding feature, for example, scholars had been left with the imperfect option of a Google image or Instagram search, turning up a frustrating and arbitrary selection of images from Flickr, Pinterest, and other happenstance sources. Now, of course, at the other end of the spectrum, there are substantial resources available for large-scale image cataloging with projects such as the Index of Medieval Art, Iconclass, and Real Online. And these all provide a blueprint for describing some iconographic aspects of depictions of books, but they offer no fine-grained specificity with regard to the book's particular physical properties. And we should mention that we've had members of many of these projects on our board of advisors guiding us as we've reformulated the schema that we've used in BASIRA. But in contrast to the encyclopedic range of the Index of Medieval Art, for example, BASIRA collects only those images, of course, which contain portrayals of books or other documents. In fact, as we'll demonstrate in a moment, our schema has been developed using vocabulary specific to material aspects of actual books.
So as we hope to show you this evening, we are discovering and making known to the broader public a startling array of information from our collected images, a myriad of details regarding binding, paleography, ruling, and even pricking. Beyond codicological and paleographical aspects, BASIRA also includes a sophisticated method for tracking how the books are shown being interacted with by agents within the work of art. Of course, a basic question remains: can images of books be provide reliable information about the past? As a class of evidence, these images might be considered as fiction, since they are, after all, merely an artist-mediated representation of a physical object. A truism of the history of art is that paintings are not photographs. Indeed, in many artworks, details are crude or vague, serving mostly as a sketch of the concept of a book. In the hands of other artists, however, we can find extraordinary detailed portrayals of the particulars of a book and its binding. As a case in point, we might turn to the famous depiction by Raphael of Pope Leo X, where upon the pontiff's desk, a great 14th century illuminated Bible lies open to the incipit of the Gospel of John. Long ago, scholars noticed that this was a more or less faithful representation of the Hamilton Bible, once in the Vatican Library and now in Berlin. This example is, of course, extraordinary because a specific surviving book can be identified. However, as we all know, survival rates for pre-modern books, and especially their original bindings, are minuscule. And countless other examples of artworks, carefully described books allow for a glimpse into otherwise lost material culture. And now, before we explore the search interface itself, Nick is going to take you on a journey through the scope and range of images present to date in BASIRA. This is what we like to call our treasure tour.
So, a database of images from the early modern period and the later Middle Ages, what we sometimes call the Renaissance, of course, calls to mind two types of media formats, perhaps principally frescoes and paintings, in this case, a complex altarpiece. And BASIRA includes many such artworks. And for each of these, we haven't provided detailed information about each work of art, but you can find that by finding the record in BASIRA via the number tag that's indicated below each image. So we include, of course, images such as these, which can themselves, or artworks such as these, which can include dozens of books within them. And to describe and catalog these, we use established authorities, especially those of the Getty, the Thesaurus of Geographical Names, a union list of artist names, and other such tools, which are robust and which have existed for decades now. But BASIRA also can incorporate any number of media formats. We have all kinds of interesting objects, and we are constantly discovering more that contain depictions of books, and each of these, of course, have their own material affordances and specificities. And of course, our focus, we're sort of, what was the word, codex centric, perhaps, at least to begin with in BASIRA. But the database is extensible and it can accommodate any number of formats. Single sheet documents of various types, hornbooks, banderols, scrolls, tablets, you name it. At this point, it's really a question of time commitment, labor, of increasing the size of our advisory board, of our content team, to build up records for all these other types of documents as well. But BASIRA goes far beyond cataloging the artwork and cataloging the type of document. We really dive deep when it comes to depictions of codicological features and paleographical features. So, for example, binding types, and Alberto alluded a little bit to this in his wonderful presentation earlier today, but we have used, again, established vocabularies, such as legatus, the language of bindings, in order to really specify particular features when they're visible in works of art. And what we find are an incredible array of detailed depictions. So girdle books, chemise bindings, which of course survive only very rarely. We have many depictions of them, interestingly often associated with women readers, women owners, and all other manner of binding structure that you could imagine. We also dive deep on fastenings, again, with the help of legatus, so ties, but also clasps, straps, catch plates, and other features of other binding features as well. End bands, there's a whole universe of end bands. Of course, actual end bands are fragile. They often are damaged or don't survive or survive in a compromised state. So we hope that much of this information can be useful also to people in the world of conservation, in the world of book arts, braided end bands, compound end bands, you name it. There's probably an early modern image of it. The external features, again, decorated text block edges, goffering, right? Most of the goffering that exists today is from the 18th or 19th centuries, but we have dozens of images of goffering, of course, in 15th and 16th century artwork. And now we have a way to sort of centralize it and perhaps eventually create subcategories of goffering to better understand it and better be able to recognize original or early goffering on a book, a real world book. We also record the titled or lettered book edges, the color of book edges, and bookmarks. There's a whole world of bookmarks. Peter Stalabras is one of the great bookmark obsessives and is involved in our project in an advisory capacity. And of course, there are all kinds of leaf tab markers on the right in the famous engraving of Erasmus by Dürer, both leaf tab markers and free markers. And the leaf tab markers, of course, depending on the capacities and interests of the artist, can be matched with liturgical divisions, chapter divisions, all kinds of things. String markers as well. There's a whole world of these, and we note their presence, their particular type, their color, and their number. And so that can also help understand whether the artist has just added them as a decorative flourish, or whether they have some sort of meaning intrinsic to the type of book being displayed. Bookmarks, bar string markers and knob string markers, widely depicted, but that survive only in extraordinarily rare circumstances, including one much less grandiose version that Peter pointed us to that survives the Library Company here in Philadelphia. We're also sort of discovering and learning about social practices related to books that have perhaps been overlooked. So the use of fastenings as bookmarkers, fastenings or straps or clasps as ways of marking pages. And we have many examples of this. And perhaps with further study, it can be correlated to specific regions, specific time periods. So an interesting aspect of a social practice that is otherwise unrecoverable. I mean, we can't really know about this other than through images or artworks. When the book is open, which is relatively rare in the kind of grand scheme of things, we sometimes have extraordinarily detailed depictions of its internal contents. And so we track all of that, the number of columns, whether there's rubrication, what color the rubrication is, whether there's a miniature, what the iconography of the miniature is. Here we also have on the left full page illumination, floral borders. On the right, an interesting example, the only one we found so far of pricking. And in fact, I hope you can see on screen that this example actually, the artist, this anonymous painter has picked out these pricking marks, which are of course used to align the ruling lines in the facture of the book. So we have these details that are very telling and often quite sort of spectacular in their specificity, as we saw with Alberto's presentation earlier today. We also track the legibility of the text. This is an interesting area of study, right? Was the text fully legible? Is it partially legible? Is it not legible? What language is it in if it's legible? What is the script? All of these details. And we also track pseudo-scripts. So is it abstracted, and in which way? Is it vertical lines? Is it linear? Is it a pseudo language? Is it gibberish? So we take pains to track all of this as well. And finally, we track as I said, the iconography of the depiction. So here in a detail in a painting by the master of Saint Bartholomew from late 15th century Cologne. This was an artist clearly obsessed with books, and he might also have been an illuminator, which of course is fascinating in its own way. We have this upside down book that presents an interesting iconography of, it's difficult to see on the right-hand side, but this is the Last Judgment, and then the Hellmouth, which is, of course, very closely related to a number of Dutch books of hours, including one we have here at Penn. And the text is actually legible. It's a Dutch prayer that can be related to, specific devotional books of the time. Interestingly, not necessarily books of hours. So this is another area of sort of inquiry. Perhaps most sort of innovatively, BASIRA attempts to track not just the physical details of the book, but what is happening to the book. And there's actually relatively little work that's done on creating ontologies for describing what's happening in a figurative work of art, right? So we devised a series of a kind of bounded set of these passive sort of phrasal verbs, and we can add more, but we're finding that, there is a great range, although kind of predictably the book is held by something or someone is the most common. The book is burning. Of course, we will be adding more and more examples of this, of flying books, of falling books, of books that are sung from by. It's not a very elegant construction, but it gets at, as you'll see, at that sort of phrasal formula. And in our public browsing interface, we're able to list these actions, to associate them with entities, and then to define the entity. So here the book is held by Mary, who is female and a saint and with the Christ child, and it's being held by her right hand, her index finger, and her middle finger, and we can create multiple actions. So we have the last action here, and this is again an homage to Peter Stalabras. The book is being torn / roughly handled by Jesus Christ, etc. So, there's this incredible array of information that we can record about how the book is being used. And incidentally, I mean, this book also, as Alberto again would confirm, has an extraordinary amount of detailed information about its binding and its construction. Now, we had people sleeping on a pillow of scrolls. We had someone in bed with books and wax tablets. This is a funerary monument, so slept upon by is perhaps a bit of a euphemism for eternal rest upon or something like that. But the point is we occasionally come across these new configurations that need to be accounted for, and so we can create new phrasal verbs. The one on the right, an interesting one. We didn't come up with a new verb for this. We're counting this as holding a book, but the body parts are left hand, left knee, and nose. So you can imagine a game of book twister where you'd have to sort of do this with the book. So suffice it to say that the array of sort of images and configurations is extraordinary, and we are only at the beginning of the project. This is the launch of the project. We have just under 2,000 individual documents to date. We're going to expand that number over the coming months and years, but with help from interested members of the scholarly public, I would say, and people who want to partner with us and be trained on how to create these records. And so now I'm going to hand it back over to Barbara, and if I can manipulate the screen share properly, I'm going to show you the live site, and we're going to navigate through it and show you a little bit about how it works.
So what you're about to see is the public face of the BASIRA project, and I'd like to read out for you the link, which is officially public today. BASIRA, basira.library.upenn.edu. This runs on any web browser and is freely available to anyone with internet access. This view-only interface operates on top of the full-featured content management system, which you would not see one unless you became part of the BASIRA team. Both of these systems were developed by Performance Software. So new entries are added and edited via the content management system, and we hope that some of you will be interested in working with us to enlarge our corpus of images, which we are, in all capital letters, actively enhancing on a weekly basis. Okay, Nick has brought up the display. I'd like to call your attention to the top tabs where there is a link to the BASIRA project website, to a form where you can contact us, and perhaps most importantly, to a Google form where you can nominate or even send to us images, which, and there's particulars in that form about the rights to those images. So we'll start. This is the display of the document level details, and Nick's going to show us that these can be sorted by relevance. So artwork date ascending and descending. So this is the oldest image in the database from 470, and you'll see this is way outside our date range. And if you do the opposite, Nick, the most recent is 1767. We have included some outlier records, partly just for contrast and comparison. You can also search to see what's the most recent added, and I think that was that was the first record entered to the database. This is the most recent, added by Peter just a few days ago. On the left is the real power of this interface, which are the facets. And the first group is artwork facets, which have to do with the general artwork. And Nick is showing us the date slider, which allows you to constrain your chronology of selection you want to make. And then once you've made a selection, you can then sort within that selection in terms of chronology. And I would take this moment to mention that when you have the results of a sort, what you have up in the web browser window is a link. If you save that link, you can come back to it later and rerun that link. Now your results might change because new records might have been added in the interval, but at the very least, you can send that link to a colleague. You can refer to it yourself. So that was part of our concern all along, that we'd try to provide an interface that could be cited and followed up on, because you don't want your searches to just vanish at the end of your browsing session. So of the other tabs we have in the artwork record groups, we have open all and close all. We are not going to have time today. This facet list is extraordinarily lengthy, so we don't have time to go through them all. We hope that you will, and that you will play with them. Yeah, so we can close them all and open them all, and we're going to demonstrate that the facet choices can be subtractive or additive. And I think Nick is going to choose a work type and a creator nationality. So how many results do we get? We get
713.
713. So now
paintings made by
right,
Italian.
Right. And now we can look at other works by Italians, or we can see, if we undo painting, then we could just see works by Italians and what format those might take. But if you click on the match any slider, that is a subtractive. Yeah, so it's both and or exceptions are presented at the results of those searches. I know I did do that quite well, but Nick is also going to show us the keyword search. which in this case, we'll put in the word Crivelli. And under creator, find that there are 3 Crivellis in the database. We want to look at Vittore, and we want to look at Vittore's works in Philadelphia. So this brings us up with only those documents in an artwork by Vittore Crivelli in Philadelphia. And if we go inside one of them, we'll see at the top of this, this is the document display. This is the lowest level, if you will, of the schema. And down below, you'll see all the metadata that's been filled in for this particular document. There's also an ID record right below the image. Each level of each work has a unique identifier that will never change. So you can refer to this as well as a citation source. And it's displayed in the web browser as well. And once we're inside the document display, we have to be extremely mindful of the very, very important hamburger icon at the top left. And yes,
no pun intended.
Yes,
this is what it's called.
Right, it is called the hamburger icon. This takes us to what we call the tree display, which in this case shows you how complex these records can be. There are multiple physical components, I think 5 within this artwork. If Nick takes us to the top level, you'll see this is a 5-panel altarpiece, and this is the reason that we included physical components, was to allow us to, if you will, just break down the complexity of the organization. In this level, we see all of the artwork specific information, and if Nick would click on Vittore Crivelli, now we can scroll and find other works by him, as well as doing this similar linking to the Philadelphia Museum of Art, where we can now scroll through all of the records that are in the Philadelphia Museum of Art. So there are multiple ways to get to information within the database. And back to the tree, Nick. So each physical component, in this case, there's not much information recorded at the physical component level, but the visual context is the area within the physical component that immediately surrounds the book. And this is where we describe the iconography and describe the action with which a holder is interacting with the book. So we're going to tell you whether it's a religion and mythology image, whether it's a portrait, what cultures it arises from. And right now, the subject-specific iconography is largely, to date, European Christian iconography, and we earnestly aspire to enlarging that culturally and geographically over time, with help from new partners we trust. And Nick, we could peek at one of the, yes, thank you. This is a document detail photograph down at the document level of St. Bonaventure's book, and we brought this up to your attention because the level of detail available, many of these images were taken by the BASIRA team with cell phones in museums. And the point is that even the most high resolution download of an image is not going to show you this much detail at the document level.
So BASIRA is also a fieldwork exercise,
Yes,
and we hope to get graduate students and others involved in that.
Right. And I think at this point, let's see, I think, yeah.
And go back to our search results.
Right. I think we go back to our search results, and we're going to look at document type under external details, and perhaps under document format, let's, what the hey, do single sheet. How can there be a single sheet Bible? That makes no sense, except when we look at the image, it turns out it's Jerome copying the Bible, and it is a single sheet. Okay, and one other thing about the document external details is that there's a tag for orientation. It's a little cryptic that stands for the spine orientation. So that's our effort to clue in a researcher as to whether the book is facing the viewer, facing the holder, if it's up to the top or the down, and so forth. And fastening is a particularly fascinating, pardon the pun, topic. which we're very beholden to Georgios Boudalis and Nicholas Pickwood for their work with Legatus and with us. And this point, I want to demonstrate that the schema is basically flat. So Nick is going to do straps and studded straps, and we'll look at a record that has studded straps. And actually, people might ask us, what on earth is a studded strap? This does not exist in Legatus. And in fact, I don't know that anybody had really noticed this. So Georgios Boudalis invented the term studded straps just for us. And who knows, this might become its own avenue of research. But the point is that within the document record that has studded straps, you'll see two tags. You'll see straps and studded straps. So our way of navigating with a flat hierarchy is to do what we call double tagging. So you'll find this record if you search for straps, but you can also then, if you want something more fine-grained, search for studded straps. I hope that's clear. And I think at this point, Nick takes over our tour.
So just to show you a few more of these facets along the side, again, we don't have time to explore all of them. We hope you'll spend time exploring them and thinking of examples, perhaps from your own archives, that you can contribute, and also for helping correct the inevitable errors and perhaps misunderstandings of certain features that only a few experts might know about. But we've tried to be as complete as possible, at least in terms of the codex. And again, some of these facets, of course, don't apply to non-codex objects, and we're completely aware of that. And in those cases, those fields are simply not filled in. But we transition from these external document features to internal features. So this is where we have things like page contents, whether it's text, blank page, ornament, what kind of diagram, whether there are certain features like foliation and pagination markings, or even catchwords that you get in some depictions, which can be interesting as well. And so, the kind of this is, again, these vocabularies are extensible, and so when we encounter a new phenomenon, of course, we add it after considering how it fits in to any of these subcategories. Whether rubrication is present on the text, whether the text is legible, what the script is, all of these features. And as I mentioned earlier, the simulated script, the legibility, all of these things.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the point that by no means is this schema fixed or inflexible, but so we really sincerely want to hear from people who are using the database. If you find something you would like to search that hasn't been provided for in the schema, we can start to try to. And the earlier you do that, the better, because we did make one change, and Nick and Zofia and I had to each divvy up and each go through 556 records over a weekend and so forth, checking every one and making the changes. So don't wait. Tell us soon.
And finally, the document actions, as I explained a little bit before, right? So one of the things we've tried to do is to create these actions, and one document can have multiple actions that it is undergoing that are applied to it. Some of these verbs are transitive, so they require they require a subject and an object. Some of them are intransitive, and so we have also come up with some sort of, in some cases, innovative vocabulary, because there was no existing way of describing it. So books that are fluttering or breathing or fanning, you'll see, such as this, right, which seem to have pages that are turning or at least splaying open on their own accord. What you can also do is you can look up an entity. So if you want to see books that are interacting with other books, you can select book, and you'll see books that are on top of other books. For example, you can select books. You can select, for example, Jerome, so a person, a saint in this case, and you can see all the books that are interacting with Jerome in some way. You can select a verb. You can also select entity descriptors. So if I want to see only bearded male people interacting with books, I can do that. Or female people, or whatever. And so this is a kind of extensible There's furniture as well. You know, if you want to just see books that are interacting with furniture, and then you can specify, you know, a lectern or stand, and you'll see books that are on lecterns or stands. And again, I can show more records so that I get a larger view of these things. So, you know, historians of domestic life, furniture, liturgy, you name it, we were, you know, encountering an astonishing array of configurations, and it's kind of an endless task. Someone commented to us after we did a preview of this on Monday that this is the rest of our lives. But we're happy to do it because we find it, you know, fascinating. And again, the body descriptors, this is something that we're quite proud of, in the sense of being able to specify thumbs interacting with books, for example, right? So we have all manner of thumb interactions. And of course, this has consequences for our understanding of the history of discontinuous reading. Again, I think we saw this earlier, but you can drill right down to the really rare ones like paw, elbow, hoof, toe, fist, mouth, nose. And if we select nose, oops, that's thumb. If we select, those are selected together, we can just select nose, and we get our friend in the Philadelphia Museum of Art, St. Peter, falling asleep. So that's a quick overview of BASIRA, and we hope you have fun and that you learn using it for research, citing record numbers in publications. And lastly, we want to just show you a couple of case studies regarding BASIRA that we think can kind of illuminate some of the potential research avenues that come out of this project. So it's all well and good that we're centralizing this information and tagging it and making it searchable, but we want to show that there are some real kind of interesting research outcomes from this project. And to do that, I'm going to switch us back over to the PowerPoint, and then we can proceed. Oops, sorry. Here we go. So the first one is Barbara discovery, and so Barbara, I hand it over to you.
Okay. So this really handsome portrait of Dr. Vanzelli came to my attention when I was researching a presentation on the archaeology of binding, and it came to my attention because Barbara Ina Deerfield had discussed the fact that her colleague, Ralph Keene, had noticed that in front of Dr. Vanzelli is his handsome book, which has hinges from the front and clasp to the back, and that is contrary to what a Dutch citizen would normally have in their library, that Dutch and German books clasp from the back, hinge from the back and clasp to the front. And so perhaps Ralph Keene suggested the artist was suggesting that Dr. Vanzelli was a cosmopolitan person who was using reference works from outside his immediate geographic region, okay? So that inspired me to look more closely at this book on the desk in front of Dr. Vanzelli, and the image at the top is rotated 180 degrees and zoomed in, and lo and behold, you can read the text on the top of the recto page, which it turns out is the incipit of Avicenna's Canon of Medicine. And as far as I know, but no one had noticed that before. So of course, yes, this is a book from outside the Netherlands or the Flanders. And perhaps this could even be further traced because Avicenna's work was published in anthology. By the time this painting was created, I believe there had been 20 editions out in print, but we do think this is a manuscript edition.
Often our work in BASIRA makes us encounter and consider the smallest details and depictions, and this is a good example. Again, the master of the St. Bartholomew altarpiece, who was also likely an illuminator and clearly obsessed with books, perhaps as obsessed with them as we are. And the small detail in the gutter of this book, held by St. John, is was, again, to my knowledge, not properly recognized, but it's clearly the rim of eyeglasses. And of course, the association of eyeglasses with books is an interesting one. And again, with BASIRA, we can trace it. We actually trace the proximity of objects to books. So we have you can look at books that are in close proximity to eyeglasses, inkwells, knives, quills, you name it. But in this case, I was particularly interested because, of course, there's the famous depiction of Canon van der Pelle by Van Eyck with his eyeglasses close to his reading glasses close to his book. But I was particularly interested because this relates to a discovery I made during the Bibliotheca Philadelphiensis cataloging project when we discovered that a book at the Philadelphia Museum of Art, a book of hours, has distinct impressions, multiple impressions of eyeglasses, only in one section of the book, only in the added section of Eucharistic prayers. And this is a book of hours whose owner I identified. He's depicted in it, and unfortunately without glasses, but he clearly, because these appear to be early 16th century eyeglass designs, he was repeatedly putting his glasses in his book, closing it, and going up to take communion. And so this is an interesting, again, a social practice. We have some evidence of it in actual books, but it's fascinating to see it reflected in images we're discovering or rediscovering through BASIRA.
This is an ongoing research project that I've been working away at for several years now, and I think it will continue for a while. In the Friary in Venice is, of course, one of the most beautiful paintings ever created, the Friary triptych. And on a trip to Venice, I had been examining the works of Nicholas Jensen and admiring the craftsmanship of his printing, which in my mind was light years away from the craftsmanship of Aldus Manutius. So when we, myself and Janet Size, encountered this painting, she wondered whether Saint Benedict, holding this book so prominently displayed, might be a veiled reference to pride in this newfangled art of printing in Venice, which led me to start working on trying to match the text of this page, which you can actually read some of the lines enough to know that this is the opening of Ecclesiasticus. And it turned out that in Durham, North Carolina, in the Rubenstein Library is a 1476 edition of Nicholas Jensen's Biblia Sacra, I believe, with an almost identical page layout, which seemed extremely remarkable. The letter form in the painting is not actually look typographic, but so the research thread that I'm following, however, is that it turns out that the layout on the Jensen Bible in 1476 is extremely close to his competitor's edition in 1475 by Renner and Frankfortia, and I've even begun to trace it even further back. So the question is, if you will, layout as it was search for an exemplar, and I don't yet know how far this is going to go, but my point today simply is that a close look at a painting is what had led me off into researching in incunabula.
And again, as far as we know, this relationship had not been remarked upon, despite the fact that Bellini's Friary triptych, Ruskin called it one of the greatest paintings in the world, right? So this is a famous painting, but a detail newly interpreted through new eyes because of our work on BASIRA. And a final example kind of related to this and the question of artists and their literacy and their knowledge of the world of books, a kind of run-of-the-mill Florentine panel from the Walters Art Museum by Mariotto Di Nardo, a run-of-the-mill artist, with these four saints. The bishop saint on the right is not identified. The text in his book had been said to be gibberish or illegible. It turns out, of course, it's actually quite easily legible, and it's the beginning of the Pseudo-Donatus, this kind of widely read Latin grammar text for learning Latin in the later Middle Ages, called the Janua. And here we have it. It has no relationship to the religious identity of the holder. It's really filler text, but it's fascinating that this artist, and here I think we can tell that it's the artist with his brush producing these letter forms, is using text from the Donatus as filler. So we have evidence of an artist who is literate and who is referring to a well-known textbook, a Latin textbook, to produce this filler text. So another example of, and we track in BASIRA inscriptions, we transcribe them, we translate them, we expand them, we translate them into English, we identify them where possible. So that's just a final example of the sort of research avenues that this project hopefully opens up. And to close, we want to talk a little bit about development goals for the future. Barbara, do you want to go over these?
Certainly. So though today is the public launch, and by the way, all these cards are up here so that you'll all take one home so that you will write to us and let us know what you're doing with the database, please. But this is only the beginning, in all sincerity, and we wanted to let you know about some of our hopes and aspirations for the future. We certainly are looking to expand the database to include images from cultures and regions beyond Europe. For example, images from Persian, Mughal, Ottoman, Arabic, Armenian, Ethiopian, Coptic, Byzantine, and other historic cultures of the book. We certainly aim to add new records by the thousands, which will require growing our project team. And please speak to us if you would like to become part of the team. We aim to eventually implement linked open data, which will allow us to draw from and feed into other web projects. And we'd like to implement IIIF image management technology to allow a better browsing experience and more interoperability with other database resources. I see Alberto nodding. A fond goal is to support classroom use of the database at all levels. I would simply mention myself that exploring the schema will teach you a great deal of terminology about books and book history. And we hope to develop collaborative programs with museums, archives, and other cultural institutions with things like gallery signage, publications, and even we've dared to dream a future BASIRA smartphone app. So
we thank you for your time and your interest. And we do want to thank many people who've helped us in getting this project launched. We welcome your input. I think we are going to not take questions at this stage, but we invite you to come speak to us directly if you're interested. If you have works to contribute, if you have artworks that you'd like to contribute or nominate to BASIRA, or even better, if you'd like a training session to learn how to produce new records, we welcome that as well. So with that, I think we'll end today's proceedings. We've officially launched a new web project, and we have a wonderful reception starting at 5:30 to mark the 10th anniversary of the Schoenberg Institute, cake and champagne. So let's not miss that. And thank you all for your time and your attention today.